In the US, 59% of stroke survivors don't see an occupational or physical therapist in the first month after their stroke. And 1/3 of stroke survivors don't get any rehab at all. And even if you do get therapy, the average session includes only 32 arm movements or repetitions, which feeds into one of the biggest lies in stroke rehab that's holding back your recovery. The research is pointing to the need for stroke survivors to get high-dose, high-intensity therapy at any point in recovery in order to make significant progress. But the healthcare system isn't giving you or recommending enough or as intense of rehab as you actually need for your brain to make those changes. And this isn't just my opinion. A recent Perspective article published in the Stroke Journal by lead researcher Dr. David Lin from Massachusetts General Hospital, as well as an assistant professor at Harvard Medical School, laid out the evidence for what's truly needed to fuel recovery after a stroke. And it's clear, as a system, we've been doing it wrong. So instead, let's talk about the right way. High-dose, high-intensity rehab for stroke survivors at any point in recovery. There were several studies cited in this Perspective article that I want to mention. The first is the Queen Square Upper Limb Program. In London, researchers at the Queen Square Institute of Neurology designed an intensive upper limb program for stroke survivors. 90 hours of therapy in just 3 weeks. That's 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. Now, these weren't new stroke patients. These were survivors in the chronic phase of stroke. During the program, they gained a median of 6 points on the Fugl-Meyer Motor Recovery Scale, which is just an assessment tool that evaluates movement. And here's the kicker, they continued showing improvements even after that intense therapy ended, hitting about 9 points better on that Fugl-Meyer assessment at a 6-month follow-up. Another study cited was the EXCITE trial. This US trial tested constraint-induced movement therapy, which is where you restrict the stronger arm so the weaker arm has to work. And participants got 60 hours of therapy over 2 weeks. They became 52% faster at functional tasks, and they increased real-world arm use by 76%. And these gains were maintained at 2 years post-intervention. And the last study I want to mention cited in this Perspective article was the Veterans Affairs Dose Response Study. Now, this VA study went even bigger, 300 hours of therapy over 12 weeks. Now, halfway through, at 150 hours, participants had achieved about half of the final gains. This demonstrates kind of a textbook dose-response relationship, meaning that in this case, the more therapy that was given, the more improvement these participants saw. So across all of these studies, the message is pretty much the same. High-dose, high-intensity rehab for stroke survivors, whether you're weeks out or years out from your stroke, can lead to lasting outcomes. But the problem is that most stroke survivors will never come close to these numbers, whether you're in formal therapy or trying to do this rehab on your own at home. And this is for several different reasons. The first is a therapist shortage. Just generally speaking, we don't have enough therapists who specialize in high-intensity stroke rehab. And of course, insurance limits. If you live in a country with any privatized healthcare, often coverage is tied to short-term progress, not long-term potential. And in fact, when somebody hits a plateau, it's seen as a reason for discharge, not a reason for a change in plan of care. Many healthcare systems are not built to provide the most improvement for the patient, but rather to make the most money for the shareholders and the CEO. There's also the unfortunate reason that many clinicians, even some physicians, still believe in the myth that stroke recovery stops after 6 months or a year. So of course, why would they need to educate on high-dose, high-intensity rehab if someone is beyond that point? And lastly, we have really slow adoption of new research. It can take years for new findings to actually be implemented in healthcare practices. And the thing is, even when new research is understood as being incredibly beneficial, sometimes the systems themselves make it hard to put into practice. So we are not going to lose hope. If the system cannot provide you with any therapy, let alone high-intensity, high-dose rehab that you need, what can you do? Well, you can start building your own high-dose, high-intensity rehab routine into your day, at home, even if you don't have access to a therapist, and I'm gonna tell you exactly how to do it. Of course, disclaimer, everyone's situation is different, so you do need to check with your doctor to make sure this type of rehab program is appropriate for you. However, I will be leaving a link to the article abstract that I've referenced for this video down in the description below. So if you need to provide some education to your doctor or your therapist, if you're still in therapy, you can provide them with that. The first is to track and slowly increase your repetitions. This is part of a principle called progressive overload, which is more traditionally used in weightlifting and strength training, and it's what I personally use to structure my home workouts. The general idea is that you're increasing either dose or intensity or both over time so that you are continuing to slowly, progressively see changes and improvements. So the thing is, when you're trying to increase repetitions, you first need to know how many you're getting to start with. So count your repetitions. You can do this by making tally marks, by using a clicker, by counting in your head, then writing it down, or even using an app. I use an app with a free plan called Strong that also allows me to create 2 or 3 workout templates that you can go through and create your own rehab routine. Now the thing is, we're aiming for some pretty high repetitions per affected body part. So you're shooting for between 300 to 800 repetitions daily for the affected limb that you're trying to improve. But we are going to talk about how to make that more manageable. And I want you to keep in mind as you're thinking about tracking and increasing repetitions, you're not going to start with 300, right? If you start with 30 or with 50, aim the next day that you try this workout program that you're increasing by 5, by 2, by 10, whatever feels manageable to you, but that you're slowly progressing over time. The second thing is to make some of your movements and repetitions task specific. You can and should include traditional exercises in your home rehab program. But we also know one of the principles of neuroplasticity is to incorporate meaningful activities into your home rehab program because our brain really likes that and prioritizes it. So you want to choose everyday tasks that allow for a lot of repetitions, like folding towels or clothing or wiping down surfaces. Now you can also add increased intensity to both of these by increasing weight somehow. Maybe you're wearing cuff weights or you're standing as you wipe down surfaces. The third thing is to build rehab circuits. You want to treat your home rehab like it's a workout because it essentially is. You can include everyday activities in this. You can include structured exercises or both. You want to move from one task to another without taking long breaks until you've reached the end of the circuit. And you may know how to structure an exercise circuit, but here's what it might look like if you're using some everyday tasks. So let's say, for example, you've got 4 stations with different activities. At the first, maybe you button 20 shirt buttons. At the second, you do 15 water bottle lifts. At the third, you're doing 20 coin pickups. And then at the fourth, you're doing 15 arm reaches to a high shelf. You take a break at the end of the circuit and then repeat the entire circuit 3 to 4 times to really get in a lot of repetitions and increase the intensity. Now here's the thing, you can also do that once or twice a day depending on the amount of repetitions you're trying to get in. Now the fourth thing to do is to gradually increase intensity. This is a really important piece and we can't just think about repetitions without incorporating the intensity piece. And there are a few different ways you can do this. The first I've already talked about is to increase your repetitions gradually over time. So maybe you're doing the same activity or you're using the same weight, but you're trying to increase your repetitions each time. So then of course you can also increase your load or resistance. You're adding more weight, whether you're using traditional dumbbells, you're using cuff weights, or you're using household items that provide weight like a bag of beans, canned food, or things like that. You can change the distance or height of something that you're doing. So let's say, for example, that you're reaching. Well, you can reach further or you can reach higher to increase the intensity of what you're doing. And the last thing is to increase the complexity of the task that you're doing. So often after a stroke, we do see physical issues, but cognitive problems can develop as well. One thing that you can do is work on your affected limb. Maybe you're practicing your reaching, but at the same time, you're also trying to count backwards from 50. And lastly, break up your routine. Aiming to get 300 to 800 repetitions a day is hard and time-consuming. To make it more sustainable, realize that you don't have to do it all at one time. You can break this up into chunks of repetitions or time periods that you do maybe 1 in the morning, one midday, one evening, whatever works well for you. More frequent, smaller sessions can help you get in the amount of repetitions with increased intensity while also not completely wiping you out so that you're ready for the next session later in the day. So here's the takeaway. High dose, high intensity rehab works at any stage of recovery. While the healthcare system perpetuates the lie that doing the bare minimum is enough, now we know better. Count your reps, slowly building to 300. Make some task-specific everyday activities, and make some traditional exercises. Gradually increase the intensity. Commit to dedicating time to your recovery, because you are worth working on, even if the system has given up on you. Leave me a comment and let me know, because I'm genuinely curious. Did anyone ever talk to you about the importance of high-dose, high-intensity rehab while you were getting therapy, or if you were able to get therapy? And of course, please support the channel however you can. Like this video, subscribe, click the join button to become a channel member, or leave us a super thanks by clicking in the YouTube bar below. Of course, a huge thank you to all of the donors who make this nonprofit possible, with a special thank you to Heather G, Ryan D, Modus Nova, and Joseph M in our Empowered tier on Patreon. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time.